The silence in our house used to feel comfortable, a shared space filled with the quiet hum of contentment, or so I thought. For 20 years, I'd believed in that silence, in the life Richard and I had built. I'd set aside my own ambitions, the half-finished manuscripts gathering dust in the attic, to support his climb up the corporate ladder. He was the successful architect, the provider. I was the supportive wife, the one who kept the home fires burning, the one everyone assumed was content. Even my closest friend Clara often remarked on how settled I seemed, how lucky I was. Lucky. That word feels like acid on my tongue now. It happened on a Tuesday, mundane and ordinary. Richard had left his phone charging on the kitchen counter, a rare oversight. He dashed back upstairs for forgotten papers. A notification pinged, lighting up the screen. It was from Clara. Normally, I wouldn't have glanced twice, but the preview text wasn't the usual friendly chatter. It was intimate. Shockingly so. My breath hitched. My hand, trembling slightly, hovered over the phone. It felt like a violation, peering into his private messages, but a cold dread was already coiling in my stomach, overriding propriety. With a tap, I opened the thread, and the comfortable silence of my life shattered into a million deafening pieces. Message after message scrolled before my eyes, explicit plans, shared secrets, declarations that mimicked the ones he'd once whispered to me, only now directed at her. My friend, the woman who'd held my hand through my mother's illness, who'd celebrated every one of Richard's promotions as if they were her own. The sheer volume, the casual cruelty woven into their exchanges, the dates stretching back months, it was a tapestry of deceit, intricate and devastating. I felt the blood drain from my face, the kitchen tiles seeming to tilt beneath my feet. He wasn't just having an affair, he was living a parallel life, and Clara wasn't just complicit. She was an eager participant. The air thickened, heavy with the stench of betrayal. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, heavier now, oblivious. He walked back into the kitchen, smiling, holding his briefcase. And looking at him, at the easy lie of that smile, I felt something colder than shock, something sharper than grief, begin to take root in the ruins of my heart. The foundation hadn't just cracked, it had imploded. If you're finding yourself drawn into Eleanor's story, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss how this shocking discovery unfolds. He saw the phone in my hand, saw the look on my face, and the smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of annoyance? Not guilt, not yet. "Everything okay, Ellie?" he asked, his voice still holding that practiced, easygoing tone. I couldn't speak. The words were lodged somewhere behind the lump in my throat, choked by the images searing themselves into my mind. Their words, their plans. I simply turned the phone screen towards him, Clara's latest message, glowing obscenely bright in the morning light. The color drained from his face then. Not the flush of guilt I might have expected, but the pale, tight mask of someone caught. He snatched the phone back, his eyes darting between the screen and my face, calculating. "Ellie, it's not what it looks like," he stammered, the classic, infuriating refrain of the guilty. "It's complicated. Complicated." Was that the word for systematically dismantling our marriage, our friendship, our shared history, message by explicit message? Complicated? The word finally escaped me, low and dangerous. Or just thorough? I watched him struggle, saw the architect in him trying to construct a plausible explanation, a load-bearing lie. He tried minimization first. It was a mistake, a stupid flirtation that got out of hand. But the sheer volume of messages, the depth of intimacy they revealed, mocked his flimsy defense. Then came the gaslighting. "You're stressed, Ellie. You're reading too much into it. Clara and I, we just understand each other." He tried to frame it as my misunderstanding, my insecurity twisting innocent exchanges into something sordid. He painted himself as the victim of circumstance, perhaps even of my neglect, though he didn't dare say that last part aloud. Yet, the more he talked, the more the initial shock receded, replaced by a chilling clarity. This wasn't a momentary lapse. This was a calculated campaign of deception involving the two people I trusted most. He wasn't sorry he did it. He was sorry he got caught. He kept talking, weaving excuses, trying to find an angle that would placate me, manage the situation, smooth it over like patching drywall. He spoke of pressure at work, of feeling distant, subtly trying to shift the blame onto the life we had built, the life I had sacrificed for. And as his voice droned on, minimizing, justifying, I felt the last vestiges of warmth towards him turn to ice. He wasn't just a liar, he was a coward. And the ice was spreading, hardening into something that felt unnervingly like resolve. He was still talking, trying to regain control, but he'd already lost it. He just didn't know it yet. Leaving Richard standing amidst the wreckage of his excuses in the kitchen, I walked out. I needed air, distance. But my feet, moving on autopilot, carried me towards Clara's house, just a few blocks away. The betrayal felt incomplete without confronting its other architect. She opened the door, her usual bright smile firmly in place, though it faltered slightly when she saw my face. "Ellie, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Maybe I have," I replied, my voice flat, devoid of the warmth that had always defined our interactions. "The ghost of our friendship." I didn't need to explain further. The way her eyes widened, the sudden, sharp intake of breath, she knew. She knew I knew. Unlike Richard's fumbling attempts at denial, Clara's reaction was different. First came a flash of panic, then a chillingly quick shift to defensive anger. "What are you talking about? Has Richard been saying things?" The attempt to deflect, to pit us against each other, was almost pathetic. I just looked at her, the woman I'd shared countless coffees and secrets with, the godmother to imaginary children we joked about. "I saw the messages, Clara. All of them." Her face crumpled then, but not with remorse. It was the frustration of being exposed. There were tears, yes, but they felt theatrical, self-pitying. She spoke of loneliness, of Richard understanding her, in a way I supposedly couldn't, painting herself as swept away rather than a willing participant. It was a performance, and a poor one at that. The pain of Richard's betrayal was a deep wound, but Clara's felt like a serrated edge twisting in it. It was the casual demolition of sisterhood, the violation of a trust unique to female friendship, that felt almost more profound, more personal. Later that day, back in the hollow silence of my house, I found myself drawn back to Richard's phone, which he'd left behind in his hasty retreat to clear his head. I scrolled through the messages again, not with the raw agony of the morning, but with a strange, detached coldness. The writer in me, dormant for so long, began to stir. I saw past the crude intimacy, the cheap declarations. I saw the patterns, the manipulation, the specific phrases they used, the way they constructed their narrative of victimhood and special connection, the careful choreography of their lies. It was all there, the dialogue, the motivation, the rising action, the inevitable climax of discovery. It wasn't just evidence of an affair, it was a blueprint for deceit. And deep within the icy landscape of my grief, a tiny, dangerous spark ignited. This pain, this devastating, life-altering betrayal. It was material. The decision to divorce wasn't an agonizing one. It was a necessity, like amputating a gangrenous limb. The moment the betrayal was laid bare, the marriage was dead. Telling Richard was almost anticlimactic. He'd expected tears, perhaps pleas. Instead, he got quiet finality. His reaction shifted from blustering defense to wounded pride, then quickly to pragmatic, cold calculation. The divorce proceedings began, and they were as ugly as I'd anticipated. Richard, the master architect, tried to control the narrative, framing me as unreasonable, emotionally unstable. He tried to leverage finances, forgetting I'd managed our household budget meticulously for 2 decades. He underestimated me, assuming the quiet wife would crumble under pressure. He was wrong. While the lawyers exchanged terse letters and demands, I retreated. Not into despair, though grief was a constant, unwelcome companion. I retreated into the attic, to the dusty desk where my writing dreams had gone to die. I resurrected my old laptop, the keys stiff beneath my fingers, and I began to write. The story poured out of me, fueled by a potent cocktail of fury, heartbreak, and a strange, exhilarating sense of purpose. I called the manuscript The Perfect Alibi. It wasn't about a literal crime, not at first. It was about the perfect alibi two people construct to justify betraying the person closest to them. I changed names, professions, locations. Richard became Julian, a charismatic but deeply insecure surgeon. Clara became Serafina, a seemingly supportive friend with a core of ruthless ambition. The protagonist, Anna, wasn't exactly me, but she carried my scars, my observations. She was a woman rediscovering her voice, piecing together the clues of her husband's infidelity. I channeled the cold precision Richard used in his work, the manipulative charm Clara deployed so effectively, directly into their fictional counterparts. The writing became my sanctuary, the only place where the chaos made sense, where I had control. One rainy afternoon, rereading a particularly saccharine, self-serving message exchanged between Richard and Clara, I saw it, the perfect, chilling twist for my final chapter. A detail so specific to their lies, repurposed into Anna's calculated, devastating revenge, it felt like forging a weapon from the shards of my broken life. The attic became my world. Days blurred into weeks, marked only by the rising word count on my screen. Writing The Perfect Alibi wasn't just catharsis, it was transformation. Every tap of the keyboard felt like reclaiming a piece of myself Richard and Clara had tried to erase. I poured the nuances of their deception onto the page. Julian's subtle gaslighting, Serafina's feigned vulnerability, masking cold intent. I dissected their text messages, not just the words, but the intent behind them, the psychological games they played, and wove them into the fabric of my narrative. The explicit details were transmuted into fictional dialogue charged with subtext, the timeline of their affair becoming the ticking clock of Anna's dawning awareness and subsequent plotting. There were moments, late at night, when the lines blurred, when Anna's fictional pain merged with my own raw grief. But pushing through those moments, crafting scenes where Anna found her strength, where she began to turn the tables on Julian and Serafina, felt like therapy more potent than any I could have paid for. Anna started as a reflection of my own shock and hurt, but as the manuscript grew, she evolved. She became sharper, more strategic, less a victim and more an avenging force operating with chilling precision. She was everything I hadn't been in the initial confrontation, composed, calculating, steps ahead. Writing her strength somehow ignited my own. I remembered a particularly cutting phrase Richard had used during an argument years ago, dismissing my writing aspirations as a cute hobby. I put that exact phrase into Julian's mouth, directed at Anna. In the novel, it became the catalyst for her final, decisive action. It was a small act of defiance, burying a shard of personal truth within the fiction. When I finally typed the end, staring at the completed manuscript, I felt an exhaustion deeper than any I'd ever known, but also a profound sense of accomplishment. I hadn't just written a story, I had rewritten my own narrative. I sent the manuscript to the literary agent who'd politely rejected my earlier work years ago. This time, her response came within 48 hours. A single, breathless email. "We need to talk. Immediately. This is extraordinary." The call with my agent Brenda was a whirlwind. She didn't just like The Perfect Alibi. She believed in it with a ferocity that stunned me. "Eleanor," she'd said, her voice crackling with excitement, "this isn't just a novel. It's a phenomenon waiting to happen. The psychological tension, the betrayal, the voice, it's utterly compelling." Within a week, she had orchestrated a bidding war between 3 major publishing houses. Me, Eleanor, the forgotten wife, the failed writer, suddenly at the center of a publishing frenzy. It felt surreal, like watching a movie of someone else's life. I accepted a deal that was beyond my wildest dreams, the advance alone more money than Richard probably thought I was capable of managing. The editing process was intense but collaborative. My editor, a sharp woman named Maria, helped me hone the narrative, making Anna's journey even more gripping, Julian's manipulations more insidious, Serafina's downfall more satisfyingly inevitable. She pushed me to sharpen the ending, ensuring the twist landed with maximum impact. We worked meticulously, polishing the prose, ensuring every word served the story. All the while, my divorce was finalized. Richard, oblivious to the storm brewing in my professional life, seemed almost smug, assuming he'd come out ahead, leaving me with the house and what he considered modest alimony. He had no idea. Publication day arrived not with a bang, but with a quiet tremor of anticipation. I held the finished book in my hands, the cover sleek and intriguing, my name printed beneath the chilling title. Then the reviews started coming in. A masterclass in psychological suspense. The most chilling portrayal of infidelity in modern fiction. A stunning debut. The book didn't just sell, it flew off the shelves. It hit the New York Times bestseller list within 2 weeks, climbing steadily higher each subsequent week. Emails flooded my inbox, from readers who saw their own experiences reflected, from women who felt empowered by Anna's journey. It was overwhelming, validating, and utterly terrifying. The quiet life I'd known was gone. And somewhere, I knew Richard and Clara were about to hear about the book everyone was talking about. Life became a blur of interviews, book signings, and literary festivals. Suddenly, people were interested in my thoughts, my story. Journalists asked the inevitable question: what inspired such a raw, authentic portrayal of betrayal? I learned to answer with a practiced, enigmatic smile. Life experience, I'd say, and a very active imagination. I spoke about the universal themes of trust, deception, and resilience, carefully skirting the specific, personal truths woven into the fiction. It felt like walking a tightrope, balancing the public persona of the successful author with the private reality of the woman who'd mined her deepest pain for art. The film rights sold for a staggering 7-figure sum. Hollywood wanted to bring Anna, Julian, and Serafina to the big screen. My agent handled the negotiations, ensuring I retained creative input. It was another layer of surreal success, another world away from the quiet desperation I'd felt just a year prior. And then, the inevitable happened. An acquaintance, perhaps innocently, perhaps not, mentioned the best-selling novel, The Perfect Alibi, to Richard. Mentioned the plot, the charismatic husband, the treacherous best friend, the writer-protagonist. Mentioned the uncanny psychological parallels that critics were raving about. The phone call came late one evening, Richard's voice, tight with fury and disbelief. "Eleanor? What the hell is this book? People are saying, they're saying it's us." His outrage was palpable, laced with a dawning horror. Clara called minutes later, hysterical, accusing me of ruining her life, of deliberately setting out to destroy them. They saw themselves in Julian and Serafina, stripped bare, their manipulations and justifications laid out for the world to see, disguised just enough to be deniable, yet recognizable to anyone who knew the truth. Their carefully constructed perfect alibi had been exposed not in a courtroom, but on the bestseller list. Their anger was satisfying, yes, but more than that, it was validating. They recognized the truth I'd captured. And then came the threat I'd half expected. "Our lawyer will be in touch, Eleanor. You won't get away with this." The lawyer's letter arrived, full of bluster and accusations: defamation, invasion of privacy, infliction of emotional distress. It accused me of maliciously using their lives for profit. For a moment, a flicker of the old fear returned. Could they actually do something? Could they derail this new life I was building? I forwarded the letter to my publisher's legal team and my own divorce attorney, who had become something of a confidant. Their responses were swift and reassuring. Brenda, my agent, called me. "Eleanor, relax. They don't have a leg to stand on. You changed names, details, professions. It's fiction inspired by life, not a transcript. It's perfectly legal." They're just embarrassed and lashing out. My lawyer echoed this, adding dryly, "Truth is an absolute defense to defamation, but we don't even need to go there. This is fiction." They'd have to prove malicious intent and direct, factual correlation, which they can't. Let them posture. The legal threat evaporated like morning mist. Richard and Clara's lawyer, upon reviewing the manuscript and the law, quietly advised them there was no viable case. Their attempt to silence me, to control the narrative one last time, had failed. I never heard from them directly again. I saw Clara once across a crowded farmer's market. She saw me, her face flushed, and quickly turned away, disappearing into the throng. Richard, I heard through mutual acquaintances, became withdrawn, his professional reputation subtly tarnished by the whispers, the knowing glances. Their affair, once a secret source of excitement, had become a public, albeit fictionalized, humiliation. There was a quiet satisfaction in that, but it wasn't the core of my victory. The real victory wasn't the revenge, sweet though it was. It was the rediscovery of my own voice, the reclaiming of my identity. It was turning the deepest betrayal of my life into the foundation of my success. It was proving to myself, and perhaps inadvertently to them, that the quiet, underestimated wife had a strength they never bothered to see. As I sit here now, outlining the sequel to The Perfect Alibi, a book already breaking pre-order records, I don't feel bitterness anymore. I feel a sense of peace, hard-won and deeply cherished. I took their narrative of deceit and wrote my own ending. And it turns out, my ending is a bestseller. And to Christ. Eleanor's journey reminds us that even in the face of profound betrayal, the creative spirit can forge strength from pain, transforming devastation into triumph. Her story isn't just about revenge, it's about reclaiming her narrative and finding her power in the place she least expected, her own dormant talent. What do you think is the most powerful form of resilience after experiencing betrayal? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We love hearing from you. If Eleanor's story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to Revenge with Emma for more compelling stories of family drama and personal resurgence.